According to a poll, most Londoners believe that their housing, health, and crime rates have gotten worse over the past year, but they do not want to leave. People were questioned about life and public services in a YouGov study that was ordered by Queen Mary University of London's QMUL Mile End Institute. The institution conducted the polling in order to find out what Londoners' opinions were on important subjects. Some of the responses, according to researchers, were striking. London was described as expensive by 60% of respondents, diverse by 38%, crowded by 33%, and cultural by 21% of respondents. In contrast to the 43% of respondents who thought the capital was pricey 5 years ago, Dr. Elizabeth Simon of QMUL noted that this particular statistic was striking. Our polling clearly indicates that Londoners have become more concerned about the affordability of living in the city over the past 5 or so years, she stated. More than half of those who indicated they were likely to move stated it was to live in a less expensive area. While the level of trust in the Metropolitan Police Service clearly remains low among Londoners, and there is much work still to be done if the public are to regain confidence in the institution, the results of our recent poll provides some evidence to suggest that the situation may be improving somewhat, Dr. Simon stated. The expense of living was cited by over 2 out of 5 Londoners, 41%, as the top concern confronting the city. Considering all the factors, the cost of living is regarded by over 3/4, 77%, of Londoners as a major issue confronting the city, the highest degree of worry for any issue ever noted on this topic in any prior London Council survey of Londoners. According to the survey, over 1 in 4 Londoners, 24%, already find it challenging to manage their finances these days. Approximately 40% of Londoners report experiencing financial hardship. The most likely demographics to do so include women, 31%, renters in private, 32%, tenants in social housing, 41%, people from minority ethnic backgrounds, 32%, people with children, 29%, and adults in social grade C2DE, 38%. More than 2/3 of Londoners express concern about their capacity to pay energy and utility bills, as well as other unforeseen bills and household expenses, food prices, and growing housing costs. The study also revealed that a large number of tenants in the city report having serious housing difficulties, even though Londoners are no more likely than in past years to indicate they plan to leave the city. Of those who surveyed, 3 out of 5, 59%, said their rent went up this year, and a comparable percentage, 57%, anticipated a significant increase in rent when they next renewed their lease. A year later, Londoners are slightly more likely to have a greater feeling of belonging, and their happiness with their local region and local council has held up well, shifting very little from the previous year's study. However, cost pressures in the energy sector might be abating after they peaked, similar to supply chains. Since October, the price of natural gas has decreased globally by over 25%. Nevertheless, market signals indicate that additional declines may be sluggish. According to futures contracts, it might take more than a year for gas prices to decline significantly from their current levels. Similar indications from the market suggest that crude oil prices will stabilize at their current levels, which are the highest in 7 years, before gradually declining to finish 2022 around 25% higher, $15/barrel, than they were before the pandemic. Higher worldwide oil prices will nevertheless drive up costs throughout the economy, even though consumer gasoline prices may differ in how much of this rise is passed through to the forecourt. Because of this, even while these signals indicate that the price of energy may not increase much further, it is still high enough at this point to put pressure on prices for some time to come. UK households will face significant challenges due to rising gas prices. The impact of these increases will be exacerbated when the Ofcom standard tariff is hiked in April. Cornwall Insights estimates that at that stage, the average household's annual energy expenditure would have increased by an additional £600 or more. Household gas bills may not significantly decrease for some time due to an anticipated shallow path for additional wholesale price decreases and provider bills that include the costs of assisting clients of failing suppliers, barring state intervention. Because energy makes up a large portion of the CPI basket, a 45% increase in April might raise inflation by 1.5 percentage points. Additionally, supply-side pressures are no longer limited to particular industries. Production input prices increased 13.5% year-over-year in December, according to ONS producer pricing estimates. which have expanded even faster than consumer prices. A simple calculation indicates that producer input prices are up about 10% year over year, even when fuel prices are taken out. Output prices have increased by 9.3%, or 7.2% without fuels, as a result of producers at least partially passing on these costs. Combining these observations, we find that while there is evidence that the supply-side factors that have led to greater inflation up to this point have peaked, there is less indication that those pressures will quickly revert. The headline inflation rate should decrease as manufacturing cost pressures lessen, but price increases have affected every sector of the economy, including the services industry. Because of this, it will take some time for price pressures to subside in the economy. Although supply-side reasons account for the majority of the present inflationary trend, a major worry is whether the current rate of rapid price increases will eventually get baked into long-term inflation. Readjusting inflation expectations to reflect current levels of demand for greater wages could be one way to explain this, or enhance search for higher-paying employment. Data does indicate a more competitive labor market. According to an ONS study, 1 in 8 firms reported hiring challenges, while resignations and vacancies were at all-time highs. According to a YouGov poll, 16% of Londoners are attempting to handle rising living expenses by searching for a better-paying job. Only 4% are attempting to bargain for a raise in their existing salary. But thus far, this hasn't resulted in noticeably faster pay growth. The difference in inflation-adjusted regular earnings between November 2021 and November 2019 is approximately 1.3% annually, which is less than annual growth rates in late 2019. This difference can be modified to be comparable with annual growth rates. The percentage is approximately 3.8% if we apply the same method to non-inflation-adjusted numbers. While this is higher than the 3.2% nominal pay growth in November 2019, it is still far less than the inflation spike. Furthermore, although short-term inflation expectations increased by 0.5 percentage points over the course of 2021, 5-year expectations, at 3.1%, are lower than pre-pandemic averages, and the year-ahead projection of 3.2% inflation is only marginally higher than 2019 levels. Other measures of long-term inflation predictions from YouGov and Citi have been more clearly heading upward since 2020. In terms of the labor market, the Bank of England agent's survey indicated that labor cost pressures were peaking 40, even if it also reported that hiring difficulties had increased. On the one hand, moderate wage growth will make it more difficult for households to keep up with inflation, even while it should shield them from permanently high prices. Although there might be some worries that GLA actions will drive up expenses, these should only slightly affect inflation. Although further research is needed to determine how higher council taxes will affect distribution, the increase resulting from the GLA percept is probably not going to account for more than 0.1% of the average Londoner's expenditures. Given that comparatively few vehicle owners are paying the penalty, as indicated by higher than expected compliance rates of 90% 42, costs associated with the extended ultra-low emission zone are likewise probably going to be negligible. Given that Londoners spend more on public transportation and less on cars than the UK average, TfL fares would probably be the most substantial cost pressure brought on by GLA. If public transportation costs were to rise by 5%, the percentage of money Londoners spend on it, which is 5%, would increase by 0.2 to 0.3 percentage points, resulting in higher inflation. Although this is an unwanted extra expense, the average Londoner may find that by using their personal vehicles less frequently, their gasoline expenditures will be reduced. With the labor market becoming more competitive, energy costs skyrocketing, and the GDP almost back to pre-pandemic levels, the Bank of England has started to reduce its extremely loose monetary policy in an effort to fight inflation. The bank raised interest rates to 0.25% in December 2021 after nearly 2 years at historically low levels of 0.1% due to the completion of a £450 billion quantitative easing program. By the end of 2022, the bank rate is expected by the markets to have risen beyond 1%, the highest level since 2009. However, rate increases will not take effect for up to 18 months, and even though they reduce inflation, they do so by slowing down economic activity, which hinders output and job growth. The effects of exiting the EU could be one source of longer-term inflation concern. Costs for imported production inputs and finished goods are projected to rise with any increase in trade frictions between the UK and its largest trading partners. The financial issue, meanwhile, is not expected to be as severe as the demands of the present. Make sure to hit that subscribe button before leaving. Thanks for watching.